Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining the Journey to Great webinar series powered by Nationwide. Today, we will be discussing how to improve employee trust and retention with employee resource groups through a fireside chat with Great Place to Work and leaders at Nationwide. Before we get started, let me share some housekeeping rules. Everyone is on mute and you should only hear panelists. This will last the last 15 minutes of today's webinar. We will go over your questions, so please submit them at any time using the question panel in the top right of your screen. At Great Place to Work, we love feedback. So once the webinar ends, we will invite you to answer the 3-question survey that will pop on your screen. We want to hear from you, so please answer the feedback. This webinar is being recorded. You will receive an email with a link to watch the webinar and share with friends and colleagues. Now let's get started. Welcome everyone again. I'm Ceci Riva Mosquera, Demand Generation Director at Great Place to Work US. I've been with Great Place to Work for more than 16 years, not only because this is a great place to work, but most importantly because I believe in the work that we do and the positive impact it has on people, organizations, and the environment. I'm also one of 3 leaders for the Great Place to Work Latinx ERG, Juntos. Today, I'm joined by a great professional and colleague. Matt Bush is a principal strategic advisor at Great Place to Work. For years, he has leveraged his quantitative and qualitative analytical abilities and deep knowledge of people and culture to advise and guide organizations in their journey to become great places to work for all, regardless of the industry, size, and complexity. Thank you, Matt, for joining us today. We're also joined by this amazing group of leaders from Nationwide that I'm so glad to introduce. We have Tim Cotter, Diversabilities Associate Resource Group President, Noemi Garcia, National Latino Alliance Associate Resource Group President, Matt Gore, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Senior Consultant, Kendra Gusler, Families of Nationwide Outgoing Associate Resource Group President, and Antonio Tony Wright, Corporate Connections Associate Resource Group President, Constituent Black Men Alliance. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And Matt, I'll take it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ceci, and thank you all for being here today. We're so excited to have this conversation with you all because really we want to learn more about employee resource groups, which we at Great Place to Work have come to understand are the lifeblood of organizations. They embody the best of our cultures. They enable all employees, no matter who they are, what they do for the workplace, have a place where they can belong, where they can thrive and be invested in, and help drive good outcomes not only for people, but for business as well. And we're really grateful today to get some time with people, these wonderful professionals from Nationwide, to learn about how they have managed to create wonderful ERGs. They call them associate resource groups in this context. And so I'm looking forward to just sharing your wisdom and learning about how you've managed to get the most out of your ERGs for your people and for your business. I know we've done a quick introduction, sort of going over your names and whatnot, but I'd love to, before we dive into some of the questions, to kick things off by having each of you share a brief introduction of yourselves, what group you have an opportunity to lead. We know, at least at the high end, what they're called so far, and your experience working with the ARGs so far at Nationwide.
And Matt, if it's all right with you, I'll kick us off just with the nature of my role. So as you saw earlier, my name is Matt Gore. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I have the wonderful opportunity to serve in our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and really help partner, coordinate, and lead all of our employee or associate resource groups, as well as our DE&I business unit councils. So pleasure being here with you all. Thank you, Matt, for the initial introduction, Ceci as well. I'll hand it over to Tim and Tim Cotter, and then we'll just go alphabetically by last name, if that's okay.
Terrific. Hey, Matt, thank you so much. And Matt Bush and Ceci, thank you for the wonderful introduction as well. And I have to say, I'm super excited to be here with my nationwide colleagues. So thank you for the invite. Sorry you can't see me live. You're seeing my still photo there, but my name's Tim Cotter. I'm currently in my second term as president of the Diverse Abilities ARG. That really represents a community of associates who have a passion for supporting people with disabilities, whether they're seen or unseen. Motto-wise or mission-wise, it's really to support the greater inclusion of people with all abilities in the workplace and the community. Professionally, I've been an HR human resources leader and practitioner for over 35 years, both as an HR business partner and subject matter expert, and have had the opportunity to work in insurance and financial services, private consulting, and manufacturing. Personal motto of mine is to pay it forward, both personally and professionally. So with that said, I'm involved in a lot of boards, multiple boards that support the Central Ohio community and beyond. And then prior to my role in diverse abilities, I actually had the pleasure of supporting various ARGs and business unit councils as an HR business partner and was a member and ally of the predecessor of Inspiration ARG. So that's a little bit about my story. Thank you.
Noemi?
Yeah, I hope you can all hear me. But like Tim, unfortunately, I'm also having some technical difficulties. So unfortunately, you won't be able to see my fresh face today. Um, like Matt mentioned, I'm Noemi. I like to tell everyone that my name is pronounced like you didn't win an Emmy Award. So no Emmy for you. I've come very close to finding an Emmy winner. So if you find one, let me know. I am in my second term serving as president of the National Latino Alliance here at Nationwide, and we refer to the National Latino Alliance as the NLA. And our mission is quite simple, is really just to advocate for our Latino community, both internally and externally. Our goal is to make Nationwide the most beloved and recognizable financial services brand in our Latino community. And however we can support that mission, that's what we do. I'm also the Associate Vice President leading 3 teams in the catastrophe risk management space. So I tend to chase the weather. I am very passionate about our Latino community. I love mentoring. I love coaching. It's at the heart of who I am, is really helping people achieve their impossible. Whatever I can do to help them get to their next career move or achieving their dreams, that's where I like to be.
Hi there, this is Kendra Gessler. In my day job, I get to lead a very dynamic team that focuses on using data to support customer communications. And I've been very honored and have the pleasure of leading the Families Associate Resource Group since 2021. As Ceci mentioned, I am the outgoing president, and prior to Families, we were the Moms Business Unit group, so we were under Women Empowered. So I have been involved with associate resource groups much of my years here at Nationwide, which is now about 18 years, give or take, in the Nationwide family. And our specific associate resource group and Families is really focused on supporting associates in all of their different roles, both in the workplace and at home. And so I got involved with the associate resource group after I returned from maternity leave with my first child in 2016, and really realized that I needed a way to connect with other associates and parents who were really trying to balance a lot of the same things. And I am forever grateful for the community that I found, not only in the Families Associate Resource Group, but in many of the other associate resource groups here at Nationwide. Thanks again for having me today.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Matt. My name is Tony Wright. I have the pleasure of leading and serving as the president for Corporate Connections, which focuses on African American men, but we go beyond that as well. The organization has been in existence for like 21 years, and I've been fortunate to be a part of it for the past 10 years. Although I'm serving my first term as president, I've been involved for many years. Our mission is to build and strengthen leaders through both personal competence and public perceptions by creating an environment in which individuals can network, share experience and ideas and resources. Professionally, I've been with Nationwide coming up on 34 years. I lead our PNC Learning Development team. My experience over the last 23 years has been in the learning and development space, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you all so much. There's a great wealth of experiences and expertise on this call, and I know it's going to be impossible to get everything that you know out in just an hour-long webinar, but we're going to do the very best that we can. And so we know that leading ARGs it's a lot of work, and it's work on top of your day jobs you already have. And so it's very challenging to sort of rise up and do all of these things that are required to lead an ARG. But within that comes great opportunity to learn, to meet people you wouldn't have otherwise met, to develop skills you wouldn't have otherwise developed. So I'm curious, how has leading your ARG impacted or contributed directly to your personal or professional growth at Nationwide?
So I would love to take this one, Matt. My story here at Nationwide is a little bit different. I grew up in South LA in a predominantly Hispanic community. I'm the first generation child of immigrants, and growing up, I really didn't have a lot of examples of people that came to work at big corporations and offices. And so when I came to Nationwide, this was very scary and very daunting. There was a point right before I took my first job that I remember thinking to myself, like, I really hope I don't get this job I interviewed for. And then I got it. And I remember Nationwide having this commercial where this beautiful woman walks across the screen with this wonderful Puerto Rican accent. And she says, I'm on your side. And I thought to myself, you know, she can do it. I can do it. And my first day on the job, I look her up inside of Nationwide's like Google platform, right? And she's there and she's real and she's not an actress. And so I got even more excited because I thought, for sure, if she can do it, I can do it. That wonderful, beautiful woman ended up being an NLA president at some point, and she actually brought me into the board of the NLA. And throughout my journey here, I had the most wonderful mentors, most wonderful people showing me the ropes and teaching me the things that, you know, because of my background, I really didn't have a supportive community because you don't know what you don't know. So how do you navigate corporate culture? How do you network? How do you know what to do next? And in my culture, there's this high work ethic, but it's very heads down. It's like, you know, you do the job, you don't ask for help, you just keep your head down and you keep working. And I had wonderful people who pulled me out of that. And so we had a full circle moment when her and I were at Latina Style Magazine Awards for a top ERG. And we took a picture together because she had pretty much handed the baton over to me. And I thought, wow, she did it and I'm doing it. And this is incredible. And so all the skills and all of the things that I've learned not only got me to that point in my career journey, but the real jump, right, is from a middle management role to, let's say, an executive role. Everything that you need from that point to there, I was able to gain just by being president of this ARG. I was able to build a vision, a strategy, to lead people, to influence without power, to communicate with executive leaders. And so when the opportunity came to interview for this big executive role, and they ask all these questions like, how do you feel presenting to the CFO? And I thought, well, I'm doing it to the president of Nationwide Financial, so I'm quite comfortable. Thank you. It made this path so much easier. And I will say, last thing, one of our executive sponsors has always put out this conundrum that when you want to get into leadership, quite often what happens is that you need leadership experience, but you can't get leadership experience unless you've been a leader before. So how do you get the job without having done the job? And so you kind of run yourself in a circle. Having the opportunity to lead an ARG is one of the best ways to do that, and to gain those experiences that can really shape you and give you the skills that you need to get you to that next level. And that's exactly what I was able to do. And I'm very fortunate that I had this opportunity and that it not only has impacted me personally, but now professionally into a level that growing up, I never thought was possible. So not to be cheesy, but the NLA really has gotten me beyond my wildest dreams.
Thank you so much, Noemi. That's a wonderful testimony to sort of hear how it's greatly contributed to a lot of your growth at Nationwide. I'm curious if anyone else also wants to share a little bit more about their experiences and how they've experienced professional and personal growth because of their ARG leadership.
I'll jump in here. Very much like Noemi, coming from an inner city, not really having a visual of individuals that look like me in roles such as I am today, uh, has really helped me catapult my career here at Nationwide, especially connecting with corporate connections. Our goal and our motto is each one teach one to reach one. And so being able to provide that opportunity to other associates coming into Nationwide who have been around a while to help them grow has been very impactful. And also just having the opportunity to have exposure to our leaders, HR, to be able to hone those essential skills, as Noemi mentioned, to be able to have the ability to put together strategic initiatives, goals, and outcomes, and being able to measure that and then be able to expose your talents and skills to those leaders so they can see what your capabilities are, have afforded me many opportunities across the organization. And then the ability to connect with other associates across the organization. More often than not, you're working heads down. With the leading the organization, we're giving opportunities to cross pollinate. And so it's definitely been a lift in my career. And I have the fortunate opportunity to be able to give back and pay that forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. And now I'm certain that a lot of people listening in on this call right now have this burning question in their mind around how to crack the code on tapping into leadership support. We know that the best ERGs are employee led, but also supported by leadership. And a lot of companies really vary on how leadership supports them. And we know that at Nationwide, each ARG has an executive sponsor, as well as support from the CEO, CHRO, and the CEO's cabinet, and many leaders across the organization. So I'd love to hear from a few of you also, how has the executive sponsor and leaders within Nationwide contributed to operations and success of your ARG?
I can go ahead and I'll jump in here. We've been really fortunate, not just at Nationwide, but within our family's ARG, to have executive sponsorship that just really helps to advocate and support working families. And when I say working families, I mean moms, I mean dads, I mean caregivers, which are our three central pillars to families. And our CEO, like our office of the CEO, they're constantly, like, they contribute to our success because they really do listen to our voice. So they've created almost, a pipeline of ways for us to interact with them between our executive sponsor and then also having direct connection into our CEO's cabinet. So, I'll give one particular example that was very impactful for the family's ARG and for all associates at Nationwide was when the pandemic hit. And immediately you're all sent home, and we did that for a while. We proved that we could continue to be successful in a virtual environment. And then things started to open back up, and there was this sense of, all right, well, let's bring people back in, let's get people back into the offices at Nationwide. And it was around the summer of 2021, and our members of our ARG were reaching out to our board within families and telling us, we don't know what's happening with our children. We don't know what's going to be happening with school. We don't know, if it's going to be hybrid, if we're going to be fully virtual. We're not okay, and we're not okay going back to work going back into the office full time. And we had leadership, all of the office of the CEO listened to us tell them that. And it was, one of those messages that you don't want to deliver, but they took that and they took action with it. We were not returning to the office in June of 2021. And I think there's nothing better than not only feeling like you're being heard, but then there's action being taken from that. And so it really just speaks to the leadership that we have here at Nationwide.
And Matt, if I can add to
Yeah.
the question you posed in terms of how do you tap into, just to build on what Kendra said, how do you tap into the leadership and your executive sponsor specifically? For us in NLA, one of the things that was very apparent is we needed to have a really strong strategy. With that vision, you follow with strategy. What are the metrics and the goals that you're trying to hit? And then bringing that to your leadership team and asking your executive sponsors, does this make sense? And having them challenge that. And one of the things that's very hard to do in any role at any time is to accept feedback. Feedback is the hardest gift you can accept, but it is so absolutely necessary. And I'd say that along the way, our executive sponsors have just made us so much better because they're willing to offer us that feedback, to press in, to say, hey, you're not really meeting your target here, or does this make too much sense? Or my all-time favorite, you don't need to change a strategy every year, Noemi. You pick one and you roll with it. And very early in my presidency, I had one of our executive sponsors. He was newly brought in, and we had just onboarded him, and we were telling him about all of our exciting plans. And he goes, wow, you guys are doing a lot of work, but you're doing what Latinos do best. And I go, what is that? He's like, you're keeping your head down. I don't see NLA anywhere. How do your people know what you're doing? How do they know what you're working on? You need to lift your heads. You need to put the NLA out there and get some visibility. And it was hard to hear because it kind of hit at the heart of what we were trying to not do, right? But there we were doing it just as we are going along. And I took that advice and I go, okay, yeah, we'll plan it out in the next few weeks. And he became relentless. He started sending me screenshots of other groups that people in my membership were liking and sharing. And he said, you need to get on this today. Like, if you want to do what you want to do for your people, I need to see it happen now. And let me tell you, we rallied together and immediately started posting on LinkedIn after Matt Gore gave us the okay to do so, of course. But we started lifting the visibility, and surely enough, that really built up the engagement and propelled us into a very different level that we had not achieved before as a resource group. Um, we went from having maybe 30 to 40 people show up to 100. And then it just kept escalating after that because people were seeing what we were doing, and other senior leaders were wanting to get involved with our ERG just because they were seeing all of the commotion. They're like, Noemi is now in a life insurance commercial. What's going on? And it was that kind of activity that we just kept pressing and leaning into. But again, a lot of that had to be born out of that hard feedback that was coming at us. And we're a lot better now at taking that in and understanding how do we use that to empower us and keep moving us forward. But I'd say don't be afraid to go to them with your ideas, and just be open to the change that you might need to incorporate based off of that.
Thank you both. I think you both shared like wonderful things about what it means to be a leader that supports their ERGs. Not only someone who helps push the ERG forward with tactical advice and feedback and collaboration on goals, but also people who can show up with a high degree of human touch and care and meet the group with where they are right then in that moment. And I think that you both illustrated that really well. And I wanted to focus, no, I mean, I think you brought something up I wanted to double click on a little bit, which is around how leaders can drive more like, your goals, your metrics, your alignment on whatnot, on how you can really help the ARG drive business outcomes and performance. Because we know that ARGs are uniquely equipped to do that in a lot of really unique ways. And so I'm curious, from your experience, from a few of you, can you provide some examples of how your ARG has contributed directly to business success or strong performance outcomes?
Hey, Matt, this is Tim. It's a great question. In fact, it's a challenging one too, because I'll be honest, and maybe my colleagues feel this way. Sometimes it's really hard to prove as an ARG what impact you're having around, for example, in our industry, like increased sales or reduced expenses for the organization. But I know in our case, in the diverse abilities team's case, we really are focused on three areas to drive success. One of them is policy updates. So we really are trying to take into consideration the needs of our disabled associates, in particular those of our associates who are neurodiverse, in terms of how policies are positioned and how that may or may not make them feel as included from an organizational standpoint. Process enhancements is another area that we've really tried to hone in on. Really improving efficiencies of outcomes is a big part of that, especially for associates that are seeking assistance from the company, for example, in the accommodation space. So that's been an area that we've really paid a lot of attention to, because we want that path to be as clear and as maybe unencumbered for an associate as that can be. And the member engagement, which I know on the surface might feel a little bit more squishy, right? More like qualitative. But to be honest with you, if you have devoted members who are feeling more engaged as associates of Nationwide, that's likely going to lead to better functional performance in whatever role they happen to be in. So I guess bottom line, we really strive to balance the personal stories that are so critical to our ARG with stats and with statistics, to ensure that we're effectively reaching out to not only our membership base, but then that we're also supporting the business effectively.
Yeah, Tim, to build upon what you just mentioned, really, I think of it, I think you kind of called it squishy metrics. Really, it's the soft benefits, right? We're always talking about those hard benefits of sales, reduced expenses, but there's so many soft benefits that I think all of our ARGs contribute. And, at Nationwide, we always talk about, we really do have a caring culture and a people first mentality. And there's a reason why companies like Nationwide, we continue to be a top 100 place to work. And it's because we're investing in things like this to make it really friendly for those with diverse abilities or those that have families that are trying to balance a zillion different things all at one time. And really that helps us attract and retain talent, which we know really does, lead to really valuable business outcomes. When the associate feels like they're supported, they're going to be more successful, and they're going to continue to drive forward business outcomes that you're looking for from them. So I think it's really, you're very focused in your ARG on some specific things. And from a family's perspective, it's really about how do we bring that caring culture to life every day in what we're doing and ensure that we continue to attract top talent and retain that talent based off some of the benefits that we offer, and by being that sounding board so that leadership knows what associate needs we have to continue to be one of those top places to work.
Thank you both. And just continue to work backwards from some of the outcomes that you're talking about driving right now. I know that our audience is also probably thinking right now, this all sounds great. But, how do you even get started on this? How do you know what your ERG is capable of doing? And so if someone could lay out for me as well, how do you even go through the process of identifying which business goals your ERG is best suited to support? When you sort of think about, okay, we can do that. We can help move the needle in that way. And then once you determine where you can have the impact, how do you actually track your impact in those areas? Because we know that what gets measured gets done. So it's not just about identifying what you can do, but what sort of metrics should you be using to track your impact? So I'm curious about how you've managed to do that in order to reach these positive outcomes. How do you identify what you can do and how to track what you're doing?
Matt, I'll jump in on this one. And having the opportunity to connect with all these wonderful leaders and many more who are not on this call. There are so many ways, and everyone's heard on this call just some of the stories and some of the impact from policy to culture to community and many more ways as we have this discussion. I would say that the best way to really uncover those business goals and really to understand where that impact can be had is just that connect with the business and ultimately your customers. Knowing that community, knowing your internal community is key to understand where we are and where we are going. So as a representative of the Office of DE&I, our office really focuses on what are those business goals? Where are we going as a business collectively across our various organizations? And we really look for various opportunities to find ways that whether it's an individual ARG or ARGs collectively can lean into those business goals with what their objectives, their strategies, and even their metrics that they're putting up against for that year or for future years, how we can provide that contribution in that lens. So one of the things I did want to provide everyone, because as we lean into understanding what those business goals are, we try and do our best to standardize some process to make it as simple as possible for these ARG leaders, just because it is a second and third job at times for them. So really helping them build out formal strategies, make those warm connections, bring back some things that they can deliberately bring back to their own teams and their own leaders so that they can uncover maybe some business goals or have that opportunity and that ability to share those back so we can focus on prioritize ones that can help move all these goals forward. So when I look at some of the ways to move from strategy to tactics, or that action and execution, we really, from our office, measure success in four ways. And or we measure success in multiple ways, but we really align with our four strategic pillars. And that's workplace, and that's our culture component, our workforce, our talent component, which you've heard about both those already in many cases. Our marketplace, which is really that brand recognition and our involvement external to Nationwide, even more so, and then operational excellence, because in the D&I space, it's constantly evolving day in and day out, really understanding where we need to be both internally for our associates and externally for our communities and customers. So really finding different ways to be creative, to innovate, to be engaging. So the way we look at that is a couple different ways, but for this call, I wanted to provide a couple different examples depending on where you are in your maturity and where you are in your ARG or DEI journey. So when I look at from the ARG portion of that DEI strategy, we're really looking at, if you're early in that career, really for ERGs, ARGs in our case, really looking at what's that programming? Like, how are you measuring that programming, whether it's attendance, who's registering, like what sort of communication feedbacks are you getting, what communications are you delivering, what are some of those testimonials you're receiving? So keep it simple and really understand where you are, and then establish where you need to go if you don't already have that already. If you're midway through that journey or in midway through that maturity, I would say really focus on the ERG and members, and your ERG members specifically. Obviously align with your chief diversity officer or your office of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but really getting that understanding of what's this community inside, what's this community outside. So what programming is being created, how's it being received, how many people attended, how many people have really stepped up for leadership positions, how many people want to be even more engaged as a result of some of the action that's happening both inside and outside of the community, or inside and outside of the corporation. And lastly, when I look at the advanced portion of this, and these are constantly, you can combine these, you can really leverage these different aspects as some ways to really drive towards that success. It's really, how do you connect with the larger organization picture, those business goals, and how do you connect even more to the external communities? And that's either relating back to goals and metrics from your ERG strategies and your goals and objectives, or really meeting with some of those outside constituents to see where can we provide some impact from a nonprofit, from partnerships that we currently have, and really understanding how we're engaging, how often we're engaging both inside and outside the communities, to really pull back and see where there might be gaps, where there are additional focus areas, or where we're spending more time on things that aren't creating the output and the impact that we suspect.
Thank you so much, Matt. And audience, I really hope y'all are taking notes on that one, because that, like, it's rare to get an answer to that question that's that specific, detailed, tangible, and actionable as well. That's actually a really hard question for people to answer when you ask, how do you actually create the metrics and design things you need to track things. And so often you'll ask people and you'll get like a vague, abstract platitude, a little hand wave, some finger guns, then you're on your way. But Matt, you really walked us through a lot of like great steps there that I hope everyone can really follow as you move forward, because I really think that that is the key to sort of try and create the ties between ERGs and business outcomes, and also people outcomes and metrics and whatnot. So thank you for that. And I want to shift now into this is a pretty tough question, but I know a lot of people are also curious about how ERGs and people-centered things also keep up with the changes of time. The ERGs have existed for quite some time, but we've been through many changes in society. A lot of things that we couldn't predict or see coming or whatnot. Like take AI, for example. We only talked about AI in the context of movies not that long ago, and now it's a very real reality for a lot of workplaces. And so I'm curious, as businesses are always changing and evolving, and employees and customers also need to have make growth or changes needed to find alternative ways of doing things and new innovative ways to provide what's best for people and for business. How can ARGs play a role in taking innovation in workplace to the next level?
Matt, I can't help but jump back in on this one. I mean, you heard me talk about metrics and different ways that we connect to business goals. I have to jump in on this one. So it goes back to even one of the things I said just a moment ago. It's really intentionally making those connections. Because when you know what's happening in the environment, when you know what's happening with a group, when you know what's happening with an individual person, you take that sense of not only diversity and equity and inclusion lens, but you get down to that individual sense of belonging. So you can zoom out, you can go the macro stance, or you can go all the way zoomed in, because you're really understanding where there are successes, where there are challenges and problems, and how we can truly meet some of those needs or continue meeting those needs where we need to prioritize. So staying on the cusp of what's happening within the DE&I landscape is being a constant learner, reaching out to folks, whether it's individually or through different communities, and really putting the head, heart, and hands back into this work, knowing that it sometimes is a second, third job, but it's really what brings this work to life. So that's how I would say you'd say innovative, is really with those connections and really just looking at the different lenses of where things are going.
Great, thanks, Matt, so much. I'm curious. I know it's a big question. Matt gave us a great answer there. If anyone else had anyone to chime in before we move on, if not, totally fine, because I also have something else I wanted to pivot to. Um, which I actually can go ahead and move on to right now, actually, which is, we know at Great Place to Work, we firmly believe in the importance of building a high trust culture. I guess having that strong foundation of trust where people trust that they work for, they take pride in the work they do, and they enjoy the people they work with. And that foundation, with that, you can do a lot of things in the workplace. And we're curious about how at Nationwide you found having a foundation of trust aligns with building successful ERGs, and how you can leverage a culture of trust and care and employee engagement to help achieve the goals of your ERG. So I'm curious how you found the connection of creating this high trust culture in general and using that and leveraging it to really boost the impact of your ERGs.
Matt, this is Tony. I can jump in here and my colleagues can weigh in. Trust for all, with our model, each one teach one, for corporate connection, it fosters a culture of more mutual support. And we have several initiatives that we tie into. We have a scholarship initiative where we're actually raising scholarship dollars for students at OSU and Franklin universities. And goes back to 2005. So over that period of time, we've given out 157 scholarships. Also, we recognize leadership by giving out awards recognizing Executive of the Year, Man of the Year, and then we have a signature award that can go out into the community. And then also, our members are very engaged with our community by participating in the Wellness Walk for African American Men. We also contribute to the Urban League's My Brother's Closet. So we're engaged not only within the walls of Nationwide, but also outside of Nationwide.
And I will follow Tony, and I'll actually just zero in on one aspect of the NLA, Matt, that's really important to us. And when you speak about trust, where do you hopefully find the most trust? And it's in the concept of familia, and that family aspect. So for the NLA, we always say hashtag NLA familia. For us, familia is not just like, hey, we're one big happy family, but what does that look like for us in terms of helping in career advancement and talent and development? Um, I know earlier I spoke about how it's very much part of our culture that you kind of put your head down and you work really hard and someone will notice, and you've got to do it all on your own. And so I want to put that as just, let's parking lot that as I speak about the next thing. So bear with me. In my culture, there is something called a quinceañera, which is a coming of age party that you throw for a girl when she turns 15, and it's typically like a mini wedding, can range from like $10,000 to $30,000. It's very expensive, and I know you're thinking like, holy smokes, how do you pull this off to pull off that much money, right? Well, you get your aunts and uncles to act as madrinas and padrinos, so like sponsors for just different aspects of the party. So like your Tío Juan will sponsor your dress, and Tia Maria will give you the food. And so what I tell the NLA members is, we are going to throw you the quinceañera of your career, and you are going to let Tia Noemi sponsor your interview, and we will do mock interviews for you, and we will let Theo Tony sponsor your networking, and he's going to introduce you to the leaders there. And Thea Kendra is going to review your resume and help you rewrite it. And so as a community, how can we come together and help you pull off this next career move? Through this vision, we have been able to get over 20 promotions in the last 2 years, where some people can stagnate in their roles, not because they're not smart enough or good enough or don't have the right connections. They just don't know how to leverage their community to pull them and propel them forward. So this is really coming alongside of them and saying, do you trust us as your familia to throw off this crazy party for you? If the answer is yes, then let us do it. And so we've seen a lot of success in that. And it's one of the things that I'm the most proud of that we've been able to build within the NLA.
That's awesome. No, I mean, thank you for sharing. And, one thing I guess I'll kind of pinpoint, Matt, is accessibility is certainly from a workplace perspective is something that's been very key to our ARG at Nationwide. And going back to Matt G's mention about innovation, we've really been able to partner with our corporate real estate and digital accessibility teams across Nationwide to build new ideas and products in the accessibility space because whether it's physical or digital, we know a lot of our associates are looking for that, whether or not they have unseen or visible disabilities. And even for those of our associates who are not disabled, those are important aspects of just work life today. And a couple of key examples that we've done just really quickly is we've built empathy labs where you can really experience what it's like to have a disability and learn more about like screen readers or video captions, keyboard options, et cetera. And then, we also have accessibility hubs that really are kind of one-stop shop experiences for associates to get resources or tips or tools on things related to accessibility. And then finally, universal design. So there's physical accessibility needs, for those of us that still have buildings, places where you go to work every day. I know our corporate real estate team tries so hard to create like the entire workday experience, meaning from the moment you step foot in the building to the moment that you leave, what does that experience feel like from a physical accessibility standpoint? So I couldn't be more proud of our partners internally who have collaborated with us tirelessly on this particular aspect of work life. So hopefully more to come in the accessibility space as we learn more.
Tim and Noemi, I love all of those examples. Those are amazing. Within families, I think one thing when we think about trust for all, it's really to ensure that everyone that's part of our community, that they really feel like they're seen, that they're valued, and they're heard. And so about 4 years ago, families began these, we call them villages. And really the idea of them is they're cause connection. They're really little small subgroups. We have a single parents village where people who really have a connection on, hey, I'm navigating being a single parent. I don't know how to balance this. I'm having a challenge. We have blended families. We have parents of LGBTQ plus kiddos. We have infertility and family planning. So maybe some members of our nationwide community who are having some infertility struggles and aren't comfortable being part of our family's ARG, we have a village specifically to support them and to allow those natural organic connections to happen. And we also have something called a Families Connection Network where we just ask, it's all voluntary, but we'll ask all of our members questions and they can choose to be matched with an associate for a variety of reasons. And they can build those connections, whether it's, hey, I'm struggling with one of my teenage kids in the high school years, and I just need to talk to another parent about it. And we can match you up with those people. And that way you can kind of form new relationships that you wouldn't otherwise form. And so we're really just continuously trying to find ways to ensure that everyone feels like they're valued, that they have a resource, that they have a connection point. And it's one of the things that I'm just really happy that Nationwide supports and that we've been able to offer within the ARG.
Thank you all so much, and for all like the great insights, wisdom that you've given. And I know that we want to transition to some Q&A time. So I think one last question, sort of before we sort of go into there, because I think it'll be a good note to wrap up on. And there's a high chance this question is going to be asked anyway, or we'll address it. Is I think Matt, you said something earlier around the idea that depending on where you are, you use the word like maturity, like different ERGs are in different stages of maturity. We know it takes a journey to get to where Nationwide is today with its ERGs. So if you were to give one last piece of advice or insights to someone else who's looking to strengthen their ERGs, whether they're just getting started or they've kind of stagnated and think they'd be having more impact, what's like the last piece of advice you give to someone looking to strengthen their own ERG programs?
A difficult but great question, Matt. I would say don't underestimate the power of connection, of a power of a phone call, of a text message, of a ping, because when it boils down to it, the lifeblood of these groups are people. People are people, and understanding groups, but those people as individuals is where you feel inclusion and you have that sense of belonging at its truest sense. Do not underestimate the power of connection and lean into that. Don't just think about the connection. Take that step and reach out to somebody. Ping, call, text, because it means the world when you know someone is thinking about you and someone is there for you.
Yeah, Matt, that's wonderful and just tremendous advice. And Matt B, I would say, two things that are kind of top of mind are executive sponsorship, I think is just key really to your success as an A or ERG. And honestly, storytelling. It's been incredibly powerful throughout our membership, folks that have had the courage and the fortitude to step up and say, hey, this is something that I'm experiencing when you might realize that you're taking a pretty significant risk to do that. But you're really surrounded by people that love and include you for whatever it is that your journey's been. I think senior leaders showing active support, like I said, is key. And employees who are willing to share those stories really are kind of powerful engines to any program. So those are two things amongst probably many others that Matt G was thinking of as well. There's probably a lot of things we've learned along the way. So thanks for the question.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This has been such an inspiring and amazing conversation. Thank you all who are engaging with the questions. And I know that we don't have a lot of time, so before we cover at least one question, I want to make sure to share everyone that we will follow up with these questions that we won't be able to tackle today. There are great questions. Some were answered throughout the session, but those that weren't, we will definitely cover and follow up with those after this webinar finishes. So this is a question that we heard here from Faye. I'm not sure if this is correct, your name, Faye. I think that's how I call it. And what advice would you provide to smaller organizations, 250 organizations? These initiatives might look a little bit different. So anyone wants to take this?
I'm happy to lean in on that one and would certainly be willing to hear from our colleagues as well. And it was another kind of piece of advice, but I think it makes a lot of sense for Ceci, the question that you posed. You have to really know your brand as an ARG or an ERG. What's your who? Like, who are we? What do we represent? And I'd say even whether large or small organization, how do you want to be regarded? I think that's key. I know Noemi said earlier about when you kind of lifted your head up and you realized, gosh, we could have more impact than we're having, but maybe the organization doesn't know how to embrace us or really what we stand for. And so I think, large, medium, or small, really knowing who you are as an ARG is a starting point before you get into all the what, the events and the activities and all of that. It's just really understanding who you are and how you want to be regarded across your organization. So that's a great question, though.
I would just add in there, Tim, making sure that you have a clear mission statement and goals so that the organizations knows what they're rallying and how they're going to move forward. I think that's very critical in addition to the brand as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony and Tim, for taking this question. Okay, 5 minutes before, so I think that we have a little bit of time for one more, if that's okay with you all. And just to make sure, just as a reminder, because I see a lot of questions around this, don't you worry. This session is being recorded. This will be shared, so you'll be able to go back and take notes of those things that you're loving the content around it. And I think that one important question that we heard a couple of times, so I want to make sure that someone from a nationwide can cover, is why ARG and not ERG?
So I'll fill this one. ARGs are associate resource groups, and we all of our associates or all of our employees are known as associates. So we just carried that on into associate resource groups because these are associate-led and associate-driven groups that we support through the Office of DE&I and the many aspects of the culture and communities. So associates, employees, very synonymous.
Love that, Matt. Thank you. That's very helpful to know and close to your culture, correct? So I want to thank everyone who joined today. This has been an amazing conversation. Matt Bush, thank you so much for facilitating this amazing conversation with Nationwide. Tim, Noemi, Tony, Matt, Kendra, thank you so much for joining. This has been inspiring. We live with great stories. And before everyone leaves this conversation, I just want to make sure that if you're a customer, you want to dig more on the results, this is a QR code that you can use. If you're not a customer, want to go into the details of more content behind all this, please make sure that you use this QR codes. And don't be a stranger. Any questions that you have, know that you can come back to us. Thank you so much for joining. There's a lot more resources around ERGs and how best workplaces, certified workplaces are working around DIB. So make sure that you check the content. There's stories from companies. We will follow up with recordings of this session, so you will receive an email after this with the details on how to access that recording. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for being part of this. And we'll leave you with a short survey to make sure that we can understand what worked and how can we improve for the next time. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your day, evening, wherever you are.